cross-cultural training is essential for an expat coming to France because these foreigners arrive in France and are usually going through a lot of stress simply through the change in environment, getting their family to adapt, and to adapt to a new environment completely. And this stress makes it difficult for them sometimes to decode, and I consider that this type of training can help them decode what's going on. It can help them sift what is typically French, what might be typically corporate culture, and what might not be acceptable at all, not normal in any case. And they need someone to help them figure this out and eventually put together strategies to find a way out of these situations. French culture can be hard to decode. It can be tricky because the French communication style sounds very explicit, but I'm afraid it's very implicit. You need to do a lot of politics. You need to read between the lines, and foreigners need help to figure out this system. At least be aware of it and find out how they're going to manage it when they're at the office. I think it's very important for these expats to understand the school system in France. Not for their kids in particular, but mostly to better understand their French colleagues. They will understand how those French managers were formatted through the system, how they learned to be hierarchical, so to speak, the communication style, their relationship to evaluation, which can be important for a manager. I like to explain a few untranslatable words that I'm going to tell you in French, like terroir, which really gives this French relationship to the land and even to food. I like to explain another word, which is râler, which can go a long way for explaining confrontational culture, the communication style of the French, how they like to say no rather than saying yes. And lastly, perhaps grandes écoles, which is the French very unique system for creating their elites, which most of their colleagues at the office will have been through. So it's important for them to have this information so that they can take decisions, understand their colleagues better. Lastly, I find it very important, or I find a very useful way to get inside a culture is to understand the paradoxes of a culture. One of the main remarks that I get from expats is, how can this be the country of liberté, égalité, fraternité when there's so much hierarchy? When you do know a little bit about the French historical system, the different leaders that the French have, you can understand how this paradox of equality and elitism can fit together, and it goes a long way. I don't want to turn them into French managers. I really feel that my help towards them is helping them to decode the situation, put French culture at its right place. It's not only about culture, it's also about management, it's also about organizations, and help them or accompany them in putting together their own strategies, which would be suitable for their context. I find it important for them to be autonomous in the way they handle French culture, and I'm definitely not going to give them a sort of a do's and don'ts for handling French people. It just doesn't work that way.